forgive me for reading, but I'm going to read. My name is Dr. Amy Fout, and I'm here on behalf of my husband Mark and my daughter Caitlin to tell you about my son, Blake Fout, who at the young age of 19 was killed at the hands of an untrained nurse at a hospital that did not strive to keep patient safety their number one priority. Blake was a wonderful, wonderful, caring son. He was a sophomore at a university, a devout Christian, a very loving brother to our daughter. He was energetic, full of life, and I'm sure he had a great future ahead of him. But in February 2007, he got sick. He was so sick that he was admitted to the hospital with a flare-up of ulcerative colitis. Ulcerative colitis is a disease that strikes your colon. It's not fatal, it's treatable, and you can live with it. This was the only time he'd ever been in the hospital. He was placed in what's called colon rest, and he had nutrition coming through a special line in his subclavian vein, which is called the central line. He improved. He was there for 2.5, 3 weeks, and he was ready to come home to us. On March 1st, 2007, he had improved, regained his health, and was being discharged. In fact, his discharge papers were in his room, and he was taken off the computer. A nurse, an untrained nurse, came in and removed that central line incorrectly. She, as well as other nurses, ignored the signs that Blake was in trouble. Blake struggled to breathe. He turned blue and lost consciousness. This was in the first 10, 15 minutes after this line was removed. Still, these untrained nurses didn't know what to do, and in fact started to say that he was just panicking. Everything's fine, he's excited to go home. We watched helplessly as, unbeknownst to us, air entered that IV site. It entered his body and then circulated around his body, cutting off the blood and the oxygen to his brain, his lungs, his heart. Blake basically asphyxiated in front of us. On March 2nd, 2007, we did what no parent should ever have to do. We watched as our son took his last breath and died in front of our eyes. What a nightmare it was to have to go home to our daughter and tell her her only sibling was dead. He was never coming home, and she would never see him again. We've lived a nightmare ever since that day. As both a physician and, more importantly, as a grieving mother, I know just how important patient safety is. I remain in a heightened awareness when I take care of my patients and live in fear of making a mistake, the same mistake that cost me my son. I understand that mistakes happen. I understand that. We are all human. Just because I'm a physician doesn't make me God. But I believe that not enough is being done in hospitals to keep them a safe place. Nurses, lab technicians, and physicians remain badly trained. There are repeat physicians and there are repeat nurses and staff who are allowed to continue to practice. And hospitals seem to be able to walk away when catastrophic events happen. They walk away unscathed. If patients lose their rights to litigation, then what consequence will they have for them when something horrific, like what happened to our Blake, or thousands of others, whose lives have been destroyed by gross medical malpractice? And we're talking gross medical malpractice. These are not frivolous cases. The cases that get to courts like ours are not frivolous. Losing our Blake to these gross medical errors was not frivolous. Families like ours are the ones that will be further injured if legislation such as this H.R. 5 is passed. I will never again see my son. I will never get to hug him. I'll I'll never get to watch him graduate from college. I'll never get to see him get married and raise a family of his own. I will never get to hear his sweet voice call me mother. It has been silenced. As my daughter told me once, we now have to be Blake's voice, to speak to him, for him, to tell his story, to keep his memory alive, and to work hard to see that patients' rights are protected, so that other families don't have to live this nightmare. My husband, my daughter, and myself live this daily. We cannot go back. This is a nightmare that doesn't end. I'm sure there's people in here that have children, brothers, sisters, moms, dads. We all have people that can be affected from medical malpractice. We now live without our precious Blake here at our side. I just want to thank you for your time and for coming here and listening to what we have to say. And I thank you for allowing us to tell you about our son